March 2023. Sam Altman sits in his office at OpenAI headquarters in San Francisco, staring at his phone. ChatGPT has exploded beyond anyone's wildest predictions. Millions of users, billions of queries, the entire world talking about artificial intelligence. But Sam Altman isn't celebrating. He's panicking because ChatGPT is running out of chips. Not money, not engineers, not ideas. Chips. Specifically, Nvidia's H100 GPUs. And without them, ChatGPT stops working. The waitlist is 12 months. The price is whatever Nvidia decides. And the person who controls that supply isn't a government. It's not a consortium. It's one man, Jensen Huang. This is the story of how Nvidia built the most valuable monopoly in modern technology, and how one CEO quietly became more powerful than the presidents of the companies everyone thinks control AI. Let's go back to understand how we got here. In 1993, Jensen Huang co-founded Nvidia in a Denny's restaurant booth. The company's mission was simple: build graphics processing units for video games. For 15 years, that's exactly what they did. Gamers bought Nvidia cards to run Crysis and Call of Duty at higher frame rates. The company was successful, profitable, but unremarkable. Wall Street saw them as a niche hardware company in a crowded market, competing with AMD and Intel. But Huang saw something others didn't. In the mid-2000s, researchers began experimenting with using GPUs for tasks beyond graphics. The parallel processing architecture that made GPUs good at rendering pixels also made them exceptional at matrix multiplication, the mathematical operation at the heart of machine learning. A single GPU could perform thousands of calculations simultaneously. A CPU could not. And Huang, trained as an electrical engineer, understood the implications immediately. In 2006, Nvidia launched CUDA, a programming platform that let developers write software for GPUs. It wasn't a product, it was infrastructure. And for years, it seemed like a waste of money. Gaming was Nvidia's business. CUDA generated almost no revenue. Analysts questioned the investment. But Huang kept funding it, kept building it, kept evangelizing it to researchers. He gave away free GPUs to universities. He funded academic labs. He built relationships with AI pioneers who had no money and no mainstream credibility. And then, in 2012, everything changed. A researcher named Alex Krzyzewski used Nvidia GPUs to train a neural network called AlexNet. It won the ImageNet competition by a margin so large that it shocked the computer vision community. For the first time, deep learning worked. And it worked because of Nvidia's chips. Every AI lab in the world took notice. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, they all started buying Nvidia GPUs by the thousands. But here's the critical part that most people miss. Nvidia didn't just sell hardware. They had built an entire software ecosystem around CUDA. If you wanted to train AI models at scale, you wrote your code in CUDA, and CUDA only ran on Nvidia chips. It was a lock-in so complete that even if a competitor built a faster chip, it didn't matter. Switching meant rewriting millions of lines of code. It meant retraining engineers. It meant risking your entire AI roadmap on an unproven platform. No one was willing to do it. By 2016, Nvidia had accidentally created a monopoly, and Jensen Huang knew it. The company pivoted hard into AI. Gaming became secondary, data centers became primary, and the chips got bigger, more powerful, and exponentially more expensive. The Tesla P100 cost $8,000, the V100 cost $10,000, the A100 cost $15,000, and every generation companies bought more of them. Then came November 2022. OpenAI launched ChatGPT. Within 5 days, it had 1 million users. Within 2 months, 100 million. The demand for AI compute exploded overnight, and the only chips capable of training and running these massive language models were Nvidia's, specifically the H100, their latest and most powerful GPU, priced at $30,000 each. Every tech company on Earth suddenly needed them, and there weren't enough to go around. This is where the story gets uncomfortable, because Nvidia didn't just sell chips, they allocated them. Sam Altman needed 50,000 H100s to scale ChatGPT. Elon Musk needed 100,000 for Grok. Meta ordered 350,000 for Llama. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they all placed orders worth billions, and Nvidia couldn't manufacture them fast enough. TSMC, the Taiwanese company that actually fabricates the chips, was running at maximum capacity. The waitlist stretched from months to over a year. And here's where Jensen Huang's power became absolute. He decided who got chips first. Not based on who paid the most, not based on who ordered first, based on strategy. Microsoft got priority because they had invested $13 billion in OpenAI, and Huang wanted that relationship. Meta got priority because Zuckerberg was going all in on AI, and Nvidia wanted to be his exclusive partner. Startups? They waited. Smaller companies? They begged. Academic researchers? They got nothing. The result was a choke point unlike anything in modern technology. Apple controlled the App Store, but developers could build for Android. Amazon controlled e-commerce, but you could sell on Shopify. Google controlled search, but you could use Bing. But if you wanted to build cutting-edge AI, you had no choice. You needed Nvidia. And Nvidia decided if you succeeded or failed. Let's talk about the numbers, because they're staggering. In 2019, Nvidia's market cap was $80 billion. Solid, but nothing extraordinary. By 2023, it was $1 trillion. By early 2024, $2 trillion. By mid-2024, $3 trillion. The company became the most valuable in the world, briefly surpassing Apple and Microsoft. Jensen Huang's personal net worth went from $15 billion to $100 billion in 3 years. Not because he invented AI, because he controlled the only tool that made AI possible. And the dependency is absolute. Training GPT-4 required approximately 25,000 Nvidia H100 GPUs running for months. The electricity cost alone was estimated at over $50 million. The chip cost? At $15,000 per GPU, that's $375 million, just for the hardware. OpenAI didn't have a choice. Google's Gemini trained on Nvidia GPUs. Meta's Llama trained on Nvidia GPUs. Anthropic's Claude trained on Nvidia GPUs. Every foundation model, every AI breakthrough, every company trying to compete in this space, all of them utterly dependent on Nvidia. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Nvidia's monopoly isn't just economic, it's geopolitical. In October 2022, the US government imposed export controls on advanced AI chips to China. The target was clear: prevent China from developing cutting-edge AI that could be used for military purposes. But the implementation was remarkable. The regulations specifically named Nvidia's A100 and H100 chips, not advanced GPUs, not chips above a certain performance threshold. Nvidia's products by name. This wasn't an accident. Nvidia's chips had become so dominant that restricting them was effectively restricting AI development itself. The US government had turned Nvidia into a strategic weapon, and Jensen Huang, he played both sides. Nvidia immediately developed a China-compliant version of the H100 called the H800, with slightly reduced performance to technically meet the export restrictions. China bought them by the thousands. The US government tightened restrictions again. Nvidia developed the H20. The game continued. And here's the part that should terrify anyone paying attention. Nvidia isn't just selling chips, they're selling the future. Because whoever controls AI compute controls AI development, and whoever controls AI development controls the next generation of technology. Autonomous vehicles, drug discovery, financial modeling, military applications, scientific research, all of it runs on AI, and all of that AI runs on Nvidia. But there's a deeper, darker game being played. Nvidia's monopoly creates a winner-take-all dynamic in AI development. If you can't get enough chips, you can't train competitive models. If you can't train competitive models, you can't attract users. If you can't attract users, you can't generate revenue. If you can't generate revenue, you can't buy more GPUs. It's a vicious cycle, and it means that AI is consolidating into the hands of a few mega corporations who can afford to buy chips by the tens of thousands. Startups are being crushed. In 2023, over 200 AI startups shut down, not because their ideas were bad, but because they couldn't access compute. Venture capitalists stopped funding companies that didn't have guaranteed GPU allocations. Y Combinator, the most prestigious startup accelerator in the world, began asking founders in interviews, "Do you have access to H100s?" If the answer was no, the conversation often ended there. This is the invisible hand of monopoly. It doesn't just control pricing, it controls who gets to participate. Jensen Huang doesn't need to reject your company explicitly, he just needs to put you at the back of the line. And by the time your order arrives 18 months later, the market has moved on, your competitors have launched, your funding has run out. You're done. And the prices, they've become absurd. The official list price for an H100 is around $30,000, but on the secondary market, where desperate companies buy from resellers, they've sold for $70,000, $80,000, even $100,000 each. A single server rack with 8 H100s can cost $800,000. A small AI lab needs dozens of racks. The barrier to entry has become insurmountable. Now let's talk about the competition, or rather the lack of it. AMD, Nvidia's historical rival, has tried to compete. Their MI300 chip is technically impressive.
Now let's talk about the competition, or rather the lack of it. AMD, Nvidia's historical rival, has tried to compete. Their M300 chip is technically impressive, powerful, and costs less than Nvidia's H100. But it doesn't matter, because it doesn't run CUDA. Training an AI model on AMD chips requires completely different software. No major AI lab is willing to take that risk. Google built its own chips called TPUs. They're excellent, but they only work on Google's infrastructure. You can't buy them. You can't build on them unless you're inside Google. Intel has spent billions trying to catch up. Their chips are years behind. Startups like Cerebras and Graphcore have raised hundreds of millions to build alternatives, but they're fighting an impossible battle. Nvidia has a 15-year head start, a $1 trillion market cap, and the entire AI ecosystem locked into its software. It's not a competition, it's a coronation. And Jensen Huang knows it. Watch his keynote speeches. He doesn't sell chips, he sells inevitability. He stands on stage in his signature leather jacket, declares that accelerated computing has reached the tipping point, and describes a future where every data center, every cloud, every device runs Nvidia architecture. And the terrifying part? He's probably right. But here's the question no one is asking loudly enough. Is this good? We've spent 2 decades worrying about big tech monopolies. We broke up AT&T because it controlled telephone infrastructure. We sued Microsoft because it bundled Internet Explorer with Windows. We've investigated Google, Amazon, and Meta for anti-competitive practices. But Nvidia's monopoly is more fundamental than any of those. They don't control a software platform. They control the hardware that makes the most important technology of the century possible. And unlike software monopolies, you can't disrupt a chip monopoly easily. Building competitive semiconductors requires tens of billions in capital, decades of expertise, access to advanced fabrication, and an ecosystem of software support. Even if a government wanted to break up Nvidia, it's unclear how. You can't force them to license CUDA, you can't mandate they sell chips to competitors, you can't split the company into pieces because the value is in the integration. So what happens next? One of 3 scenarios. First, governments intervene. The US, EU, or China could declare Nvidia's monopoly a national security risk and force divestitures or open source requirements. But this seems unlikely given that Nvidia is currently a strategic asset for the United States. Second, competition emerges. Maybe AI models evolve to run efficiently on different hardware. Maybe a new architecture makes GPUs obsolete. Maybe a consortium of tech giants funds an open-source alternative. But betting against a $1 trillion incumbent with 15 years of moat seems foolish. Third, and most likely, the monopoly continues. Nvidia keeps printing money, Jensen Huang becomes one of the richest people on Earth, AI development remains concentrated in the hands of a few mega corporations who can afford the compute, and the rest of us watch as the future is built by those who had access, not those who had ideas. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't illegal. This isn't fraud. This isn't even unethical by most standards. Nvidia built a better product. They invested in infrastructure when no one else cared. They made long-term bets that paid off. Jensen Huang didn't steal this monopoly. He engineered it. And now every AI company, every nation, every researcher who wants to participate in the most important technological revolution of our lifetime has to go through him. The lesson isn't that monopolies are inevitable, it's that infrastructure monopolies are invisible until they're inescapable.
When Nvidia was giving away GPUs to researchers in 2008, no one noticed. When they built CUDA and made it free, no one cared. When they spent billions on data center chips while their competitors focused on gaming, analysts questioned their strategy. But Jensen Huang was playing a different game. He wasn't competing for market share, he was building a choke point. And now, every breakthrough in artificial intelligence, every advancement in medicine, every autonomous vehicle, every scientific discovery powered by machine learning, all of it flows through Nvidia's chips. You can't build the future without them, and Jensen Huang decides who gets to build it. This is the hidden architecture of power in the 21st century. It's not about oil or gold or land. It's about the infrastructure that enables the next generation of technology. And right now, that infrastructure has a name, a logo, and a CEO who controls it absolutely. The AI revolution isn't being led by the people building the models, it's being controlled by the man who sells the shovels. And unlike the gold rush, there's only one place to buy the shovel.